is Eric Fredricksen to me? Well, I've said it before and I'll keep saying it until the end of my days that if it were not for him, I would not have the life and career that I have today. I met him at a very impressionable age when I was 19 and kind of rebellious and fighty. And for some reason, he saw something in me and introduced me and encouraged me to take his stage combat class. And I did, and it forever changed my life. And I assimilated to him and the teachings of stage combat. And for once, my tomboy tendencies made sense in my life. And I saw a future where I could grow and expand. And I think the thing that I most responded to in him was the fact that he came at things, even though he had an athletic background like I had, and was very much into training as I was, that he continually connected things to the actor side of the brain and how things could be told in story and how stage combat was a tool to propel character development and storytelling. So that's what he did professionally, but on a personal level, he very, very much was a father figure to me as well, having lost two fathers by the time I turned 20 and one after I had met him when I was an undergrad. He helped me through that process and that transition more than he'll ever know, and I'm thankful every day that our paths have crossed.
How did you get into what we call stage combat?
Well, it's the same way I could have been a bus driver. That year they said, has anyone done a fight? And I didn't, and it worked out. And then I thought I better learn something. They sent me to Paddy, and I learned some things, and he encouraged me to study competitive fencing, because he came from the famous Bertrand, the French fencer, he started there. So I started with a guy, wonderful Hungarian coach that lived in Minneapolis. And he lived there, and we would start every morning in Minnesota in the winter. Zoltan Radetzky, he was in the 32 Olympics in the modern pentathlon. And Paddy had heard of him. When I told Paddy I was studying fencing, and he would start, we'd go out, salute, have our little masks. He would have, on with the mask, up and down his sidewalk. He'd been out in the morning around 6:30, shoveling, trying to get the sidewalk clear, and we'd fence.
In the snow?
In the snow. And it went from there. So that's how I got into stage combat. I learned a skill, and I don't mean I took 6 lessons and went, I've done some fencing. I studied for 2 years with him. Went to New York. When I went to New York after the Guthrie, I started at the, I studied with Maestro Santelli.
How did you get into acting?
Acting was what, I remember being caught out, as it were, in 7th grade. I was reading a lot, and there were no books in our house. My granny adopted my sister and I and all that sort of thing. Boo-hoo, is very depressed. And I would go to the Carlisle Public Library and just read things. It became what TV would be for kids today, or maybe the texting. And I was sitting in a room reading. I'll never forget. She was a child, and I was a child.
Edgar Allan Poe.
In this kingdom by the sea. And it still can touch me. Anyway, I was, come on, guys. I wrestled in college. That was bad. Look at this show. I was beginning to get a little jerky reading this poetry, and a woman, the librarian, came in and said, you're in the wrong section. I was asked to, maybe I should be in another room, like the room on, I don't know, what, tire repair or something. I don't know. And Ms. Nance told me what I skinned like Nicaean barks, like Nicaean, not Nicaean, that is skin, Nicaean barks of yore. Well, I don't know. So, well, there was sailing boats, of course, in Italy and Greece and all that. Way back, and thy skin is like a bark stuck in my head because I knew what bark was. And she said, well, think of an Indian, which didn't help me. Think of an Indian canoe. They were called barks.
Sure.
And so there we went. And school, yeah. Fairmont State in the old days. You know, I'm talking about the old days. You say you want to major in phys ed, you had to play 2 sports. Doesn't mean you try out. Football and theater. And I remember a guy
So in
named...
high school you studied theater? You took theater
Nope,
stuff?
there was no theater classes, but I saw a play in high school, and I thought it was real. I mean, I wasn't an idiot, but I went, that is real life. And I had a guy named Brad Smoker. He was from Northwestern. He was my teacher. First play I was in college was J.B., Archibald McClish. And Brad Smoker called me over the table. He said, I want to tell you something. You know, you could make a living at this. Keep that in mind. And I worshiped him.
In undergrad or?
As an undergrad freshman.
And where did you do your undergrad?
Fairmont State College, Fairmont University. 4 weeks later, a woman said, Brad Smoker would like you to call him. You can use my phone. And called him. He said, would you and Jerry drive up and audition for the summer stock I'm starting this summer in Saldersburg, Pennsylvania? That's how it started. I had studied 2 years of Bando, which is a Burmese fighting style with Dr. Mwang Ji at Ohio University, where I was studying acting. I thought, well, I had studied karate for a year. It doesn't mean I could choreograph anything. 6 people have to fight in a story, Fables Here and Now, called Gassir, Great Hero. And I'd been cast as Gassir. They said, you should apply for a Guthrie Fellowship. Long story, I got it, and they called me in. Michael Langham, who had worked with Olivier and many people at the National, and then ran Stratford, then ran the Guthrie, said, Eric, you're going to do this fellowship. We want you to study with Paddy Craig. I said, Paddy? I thought, I'm very grateful, but I thought I'd go study with Rod Colvin. No, it must be Paddy Craig. So I went up and I met Paddy. And I remember calling the Guthrie. I said, could you patch me into Michael Langham, patch me in. I said, Michael, what should I pay Paddy? He said, pay him nothing. So I said, Paddy, I want to be fair, our first meeting. He said, oh, not to worry, old boy, not to worry at all. What did Michael say? Pay him nothing. Oh, marvelous. But it was genuine. He thought that was hilarious. He never forgot that story. I've got to read you this, if you don't mind.
Please.
Because this today, you couldn't get away with this. And this is one of the pictures he gave me. I'm sorry, I'll hold it up. It's all right. It's my favorite shot of Paddy. There's so many, but that's wonderful. He says, Eric, don't forget, wine, women, and song, the only way. Love, Paddy Crane. Now, we know, the true believers, know what Paddy meant, but today, an older man saying that would automatically probably cause a stir, maybe be expelled or something, and he never had anything but love and respect for women.
Who was Paddy to you?
Paddy was, I can sum this up in one, don't get me started. We were doing a workshop. I was doing a workshop. Paddy was there. And 2 young, I still have the image, I don't know, 2 young women and a young guy came up and said, can we talk to you for a minute? I said, yes. And the young woman said, Eric is, forgive me, is Paddy your father? That's, maybe you might think that. And even telling Janet, I said, I didn't have an answer. This had never been asked. And I never thought of it this way. I said, well, I don't know. He might be, I guess.
Yeah?
Sorry. That's what came out. And that's, yeah, I think he's the father to what we call stage combat. You know, he was instrumental in starting the British Society, as you know. And honorary member of the American Society.
So how would you say, since your involvement of meeting this man at the Guthrie, has stage combat changed?
I feel no one wants to read a novel, and that's wrong, and that's silly, and that's general, but I think, forgive me, it's generally true that most people would rather see a result than the development.
So product versus process?
I think process, no one wants to see a character work it out as much as a character kick some ass.
So for me, I would say you have this man who was kind of the grandfather of what stage combat is morphing, but you're the acting connection that pushed that a lot.
Well, yes, and you look, I mean, I looked it up and it seems so self-serving and I didn't do it. I have a little note to Paddy and I from Christopher Plummer after he opened and got a Tony for Cyrano. And he wrote a note, and I have the same. Dear Eric, I think you and Paddy would be so pleased. Now, that's an exquisite actor.
Yes.
My God, what an actor. And he wasn't that good physically, and I think that's the thing, the gift Paddy gave me is, if you can act and learn this and that, and if you have another actor against you, this was a Vietnam vet who was very physical, and Christopher wanted me to go to New York and be the de Valverde, and Michael Lang said, no, Eddie, this will be wonderful stuff for you next year, wonderful season and all that. Well, it worked out fine. It won a Tony, and the fights were raved about and all that, and I get mentioned, and Paddy did. That's perhaps the crowning thing in my little life. Christopher Plummer could act brilliantly and act. Sam Waterston was not a physical gymnast, but he could act. So I think the hope today for us who are teaching acting and teaching stage combat is look at it as acting. Good actors do instinctively, and that's what we've got to teach to. Be a better actor. You don't have to be you were a gymnast, I was a third-rate competitive fencer and a martial artist. Who cares? The point is what you bring to creating another life that people will care to watch when you do your thing.
Beautiful.
Paddy's who I think. There we are.